Hey, what's up, budget gamers? I paid $69 on AliExpress to have this thing sent to me, and just how awesome that is will become apparent. Yeah, an RX 580, new, for $69. Nice. To get this out of the way right away, this obviously isn't a sponsored video. This card was purchased out of pocket, and no vendor is doing sponsored content with a channel this size. This is the SJS RX 580 2048 SP, which means it's really more of an RX 570, but still, $69. Starting with the good, it's $69. Nice. It ostensibly has a warranty. It looks, I think, very good, kind of power color-ish. It installs official drivers from AMD. It has a useful cooler, which even cools the power delivery, and it has a BIOS with just a 100 watt power target, which means it's very easy to power and slots into almost anything. The bad then? It has just a 100 watt power target, so it's clocked low at 1180 MHz on the core and 1750 MHz on the memory. It also weirdly has an 8-pin power connector despite its low power budget, which means some office PCs and workstations will need an adapter. Although with a 100 watt target, most adapters should be perfectly safe. As just a display adapter, this thing is already good value, but we need to know, does it game? Test bench note, yes, this went into an X58 workstation rather than my Tiger Lake i9 personal system. A $69 GPU for gaming on an 11th Gen i9 doesn't make sense. Putting it into a $75 workstation conversion does. Consider this then a worst case scenario. Anyway, to the benchmarks. Our lone synthetic, Firestrike, sees our little import put up a score a shade over 12,500, which for context is beaten pretty handily by an overclocked 4GB RX 570. Okay, so it's an inauspicious start, especially since this card is a 1080p low to medium card these days and may not need its 8GB of VRAM. Right away in esports, however, we dispel the idea that 8GB is useless. In Apex with low settings but 6GB textures, we get a more than acceptable 118 FPS average with a 1% low of 76, and see that we're easily allocating over 4GB on this card. Going over to classic AAA titles then, GTA 5 at high settings with the sliders halfway also immediately blows past 4GB of allocation. We see an average here of 82 FPS with a 1% low of 59.4, although it's a bit deceiving and shouldn't imply bumping the settings. In Los Santos itself, or on the Coast Highway, the frame rate is in the 80 to 100 range and often CPU limited, while in the more foliated northern parts of the map, the frame rate drops to the 60 to 70 range, so for staying above 60 all the time, this settings combination is kind of the sweet spot. Black Ops 3, possibly the last well-optimized Call of Duty title and home to the best zombies play in the franchise, has no problem being turned up to 11. At all maxed settings, this 580 pushes an average over 90 FPS with a 1% low in the mid-70s, allowing this aging masterpiece to still look brilliant and remain smooth while slaying hordes of the undead. Far Cry 5, however, needs a bit of a drop to stay in the realm of comfortable frame rates. Here, using the low preset, the SJS 580 gives us an average of 77 with a 1% low of 64. This probably could be pushed to medium just fine, but the 1% may end up dipping low enough to feel it, so caveat emptor. In a similar vein to Far Cry, Borderlands 3 at 1080p medium stresses the 580 to an average of 66 with a 1% of about 54, which is playable for this title. Dropping to low, however, sees the average climb over 90 and the 1% over 70, which may be your preferred way to play. But what about newer AAA titles? Forza Horizon 5 actually recommends medium settings, but delivers just under 60 FPS at native 1080 that way. Using low instead results in this 580, putting up an average of 68 FPS with a minimum of 55. Worth highlighting here that Forza does support FSR, which could allow a bump in the settings while keeping the frame rate above 60. Unfortunately for anyone wanting to play Horizon Zero Dawn, nothing really delivers a 60 FPS experience at 1080p here. Using the Favorite Performance preset, we get an average just over 50, which is playable, but even with FSR, it's too far from 60 to get there without some major sacrifices. However, because of the 8 gigs of VRAM on this card, there is the option of cranking everything to Ultra, capping the frame rate at 30, and having a visual experience every PS4 player wishes they'd been able to have. To end on a high note rather than disappointment then, we have to turn to Doom Eternal, which not only allows the use of 8 gigs of VRAM, but embraces it. At 1080p, using the Ultra preset, Doom blows past 6 gigs of VRAM allocation and doesn't deliver just a 60 FPS experience, but nearly 90 FPS with a 1% in the mid-60s. So, does the SJS RX 580 2048 SP game? Yes. Is it a good value? Without a doubt. Should you buy one? If you just want something to get you up and running at 1080p for cheap, then absolutely. It blows away cards like the GT 1030, GTX 1630, and even GTX 1650 for significantly less money. Whether or not the warranty ends up being useful or honored remains to be seen, but for context, this card is priced competitively with used ones anyway. Oh, and if you really need, it also comes in white. With that, thank you for watching, like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.